Here's something uncomfortable. You already understand your problem. You know you overwork. You know you carry too much. You know you stay slightly braced. You know you struggle to relax. You've heard the language. You've read the books. You've had the conversation. So here's the real question. If you understand it, why hasn't it changed? And this is where most men, especially driven men, get stuck. Because we assume if I can explain it, I can fix it. But insight and integration, they're not the same thing. Understanding something intellectually does not mean your system has changed. And this is where driven men fool themselves. Insight, it feels like progress. Naming something creates relief. Maybe in your mind, you're saying something like, ooh, I have control issues. I struggle to rest. I'm always on edge. And that awareness reduces uncertainty. And reduced uncertainty, that feels stabilizing. But insight alone does not retrain a pattern. In fact, it can become a substitute for change. Naming happens in your thinking mind. Patterns live in your body. And the body does not shift just because you understand it. You can intellectually know you don't need to brace, and yet you still brace. You can know you don't need to control outcomes, and yet you still grip them tightly. You can know stillness is safe and still feel alert. That's not hypocrisy. That's conditioning. And conditioning doesn't dissolve through insight. It rewires through experience. To understand why, you have to understand how patterns are stored. There are two systems at play. The thinking brain, and that's the part of you that understands. And then there's a pattern brain, the part that runs automatically. The thinking brain processes concepts. The pattern brain runs habits. Habits of posture, habits of breathing, habits of vigilance, habits of tone, habits of control. The pattern brain learns through repetition and experience, not explanation. You didn't become driven because someone explained discipline to you. You became driven because you practiced it repeatedly and under pressure and over time, which means this. If your tension is practice, it won't dissolve through insight. It must be retrained through experience. And this is where the gap shows up, not in theory, but in real life. Most capable men live in this gap. They can articulate their weaknesses. They can explain their patterns. They can even describe their edge. But when the moment comes, when stress hits, when someone challenges them, when silence opens up, the body takes over. And the body runs what it has rehearsed many, many times, not what you recently understood. That's why you can leave a conversation determined to change and still react the same way a week later. Insight changes perspective, but integration changes patterns. And pattern only changes through embodied repetition. And here's another uncomfortable truth. Insight feels productive. You can listen to a podcast, you can watch a video, you can even read a book and walk away feeling like you moved forward. But if nothing shifts in your behavior, you didn't move forward. You just gathered information. Driven men often hide in insight because insight feels like forward motion, but it doesn't require risk either. Integration does. And what integration requires is voluntary discomfort, not dramatic discomfort, specific discomfort. Sitting still when your body wants to move, not defending yourself when you feel misunderstood, letting silence stretch without filling it, delegating without hovering, resting without earning it first. That's not theory. That's retraining. That's practice. And retraining feels slower than understanding, which is why most men stop at insight, because insight satisfies the mind, but retraining confronts the will. And beneath all of this sits a leadership principle most men overlook. Hearing is not the same as doing. Knowing is not the same as obeying. Understanding is not the same as transformation. You can agree with truth and still not embody it. Real change requires alignment between behavior and belief. And alignment requires repetition. You don't drift into integration. You train into it. And this is where driven men are uniquely vulnerable. Driven men are excellent at collecting insight. You're intelligent, you're capable, you're self-aware. But self-awareness without behavioral adjustment becomes sophisticated stagnation. You become articulate about your limitations without actually moving beyond them. And over time, that creates quiet frustration because you can see the problem, but you're also still living in it. And here's what most men are missing. Clarity is not achieved through explanation. It's achieved through experience. You don't learn that stillness is safe by understanding it. You learn it by sitting in it repeatedly over and over again. You don't learn that you don't need to control everything by analyzing it. You learn it by releasing control and watching the world not collapse. Explanation informs, but experience rewires. And information alone cannot outpace conditioning. So the real question isn't what you know, it's who you're becoming. And you have to make a decision on the required but subtle identity shift here. Instead of asking, what do I need to understand? You might ask, what do I need to practice? Instead of consuming more content, you build new reps. Reps feel slower than insight though, but they're stronger because integration builds internal evidence, and internal evidence quiets vigilance. So ask yourself honestly, where have I gathered insight but avoided practice? Where have I explained my pattern but not retrained it? Where am I intellectually clear but behaviorally unchanged? That gap is where growth lives, and it's not closed by more understanding. It's closed by discipline, repetition. Real strength isn't insight, it's embodiment. It's not being able to explain your patterns. It's being able to interrupt it. It's not knowing you don't need to brace. It's catching yourself mid-brace and then releasing. It's not understanding regulation. It's practicing it until it becomes your default. That's integration. And integration is leadership, because a man who integrates truth becomes steady, not just informed. And steadiness is built through decision, not awareness. If you've been living in insight, don't dismiss it, but don't mistake it for change. Information doesn't transform you. Practice does. Most men will continue collecting insight. It feels productive. It feels intelligent. It feels safe. A few will choose integration. They'll build reps. They'll sit in discomfort. They'll retrain their patterns. And those men don't just understand clarity. They actually live in it. If you're ready to move beyond explanation, the next step is below. Not more content, structure, repetition, integration. If you're serious about rewiring patterns, not just naming them, take the next step.